welcome to Handmade Happenings. I'm Marissa and this video is part 1 of my summer project. So for the last several years, my friend Holly and I have done what we call our summer project. We pick a theme and then we each make a dress or costume out of that, centered around that theme. Now theoretically we do this during the summer, from June to August. But this year we decided that we both needed extra time to get it done, so we actually allowed ourselves to start in March. So this video is just talking about my design process and what my inspiration was for this costume. This year's theme was a little more broad than normal. We just kind of came up with each doing our own sort of original character, which really meant that almost anything was an option. And I decided to do what I call a medieval spy, which is mainly just kind of to give me something to throw into a search engine to look up inspiration. I found several different ones, but the main one that I found is this picture here. It should be on screen. So that's my primary inspiration for this. So let's get started. Really the hardest part about designing this costume was deciding on the style of dress I wanted to do. It seems like most what I would classify medieval fantasy, because historical accuracy is not a factor in this at all, dresses have like full princess seam, so no waist seam, and it just goes all the way down in panels. I like this style dress, but I don't have a pattern for it and I didn't want to buy one. So that wasn't really an option because I absolutely was not going to try and draft one either. However, I still wanted to do like a princess seam bodice because I do like princess seams. And so with the bodice decided, next up came the skirt. And this was just as hard to figure out as the bodice because I just really didn't know what I wanted to do. I had a few options. One was like an A-line skirt and then have it in panels where each panel was lining up at the same point as the seams on the bodice because you have all the princess seams. Unfortunately, that seemed almost as complicated as just drafting a princess seam dress, which is why I didn't go with that, because if I was going to do one, I might as well do the other. Another option was just a rectangle skirt and gathering it, which obviously would have been probably the simplest option. But I didn't want to have all of that fullness at the waist. To me, gathers just like put a lot of fullness there depending on what I did. Another option was a floor-length circle skirt, which is definitely something I want to do, but not for this. Just didn't want a lot of fullness at the hem, which that would have caused because of a design feature that I'll talk about later on in the video. So what I landed on was doing a rectangle skirt with inverted box pleats and doing them right underneath each of the seams on the bodice. This to give it a similar look still to some of the princess seam ones, or like the ones that kind of look like they were maybe one big rectangle and then the princess seams were sewn in and then the seam just stops and releases the rest of the fabric like fullness out. I thought that this method would kind of give me that look. And for the sleeves, I chose to do a basic short sleeve out of the main fabric and then have a white drapey piece attached to it like the angel or waterfall sleeves. This is something that like I always love the look of, but usually don't do anything with because it's like they're so impractical and I can just imagine it, dragging through a bowl of soup or something while trying to eat. So I've never done them, not even for a costume, but this seemed like the appropriate time to finally do that. So last thing to talk about is the trim. Most of the inspiration I found has what I think is called jacquard ribbon around the hem of the sleeves and the neckline, the skirt, and sometimes at the waist. I wanted to mimic that look without the expense of having to buy ribbon. So I came up with the slightly crazy idea of just hand embroidering it myself. So I'll have a video dedicated just to that, but I did do the trim around the hem of the skirt, the neckline, the sleeve hem, and that was it. Yeah. I didn't do it at the waist. I did it everywhere else though. So that's the design of the dress. The next part was I did plan to have a stays inspired top to go over it. And when I designed this, I planned it with just like a basic princess seamed top that kind of came down a little in the front to a point. It's very similar to actually a dress that I made myself a while back, I think about a year ago or so. So I think I had that in mind when I was designing it, but I wasn't sure how exactly the actual dress was going to turn out, so I didn't put a lot of detail into this because I didn't want to get too attached to a certain like design and then discover that it wasn't going to work with the dress. For the same reason, I had some other accessories in mind and I really didn't draw them out or plan them because, again, I was kind of very loosely planning at this point just in case it didn't work out, because I just wanted to see how the dress turned out first. Before I finish this video, I am going to go ahead and talk about the fabric. So for the dress, I got this purple cotton voile, which, while it's not sheer, it was too thin to be used without a lining, so I just flatlined it to some white broadcloth. And then for the waterfall portion of the sleeve, I used the same cotton voile as the dress, except in white, and I didn't line it. And then for the stays or top, whatever you want to call it, for that I used some faux black leather that's kind of flannel backed. I really don't know where it came from because it was just given to me, but I really like it because it's thin, very easy to work with, and so far I haven't had like any problem with like it cracking or anything, or peeling, that's the word, like a lot of faux leathers will. So I really like it. This is the last of it, so hopefully it turns out really well. Well, that is all of the planning. Again, this is part 1 of a 4-part series that will span the entire month of September. I hope you will join me next week for part 2 when I will make the dress. And thanks for watching.